So I'm going to read a short extract of one of my favourite books, which is I Captured the Castle by Dodie Smith. If you don't know who Dodie Smith is, she also wrote 101 Dalmatians, but this is a wonderful novel that I always go back to, a real comforting read. So, and has one of the best opening paragraphs ever, published by Vintage. So, I write this sitting in the kitchen sink. That is, my feet are in it, the rest of me is on the draining board, which I have padded with our dog's blanket and the tea cosy. I can't say that I'm really comfortable, and there is a depressing smell of carbolic soap, but this is the only part of the kitchen where there is any daylight left, and I have found that sitting in a place where you have never sat before can be inspiring. I wrote my very best poem while sitting on the hen house, though even that isn't a very good poem. I've decided my poetry is so bad that I mustn't write any more of it. Drips from the roof are plopping into the water butt by the back door. The view through the windows above the sink is excessively drear. Beyond the garden is the courtyard and the ruined walls on the edge of the moat. Beyond the moat, the boggy ploughed fields stretch to the leaden sky. I tell myself that all the rain we have had lately is good for nature, and that at any moment spring will just surge on us. I try to see leaves on the trees and the courtyard filled with sunlight. Unfortunately, the more my mind's eye sees golds and greens, the more drained of all colour does the twilight seem. It is comforting to look away from the windows and towards the kitchen fire, near which my sister Rose is ironing, though she obviously can't see properly, and it will be a pity if she scorches her only nightgown. I have two, but one is minus its behind. Rose looks particularly fetching by firelight because she is pinkish gold, very light and feathery. Although I'm rather used to her, I know she is a beauty. She's nearly 21 and very bitter with life. I am 17, look younger, feel older. I am no beauty, but I have a neatish face. I have just remarked to Rose that our situation is really rather romantic. Two girls in this strange and lonely house. She replied that she saw nothing romantic about it, being shut up in a crumbling ruin surrounded by a sea of mud. I must admit that our home is an unreasonable place to live in. Yet I love it. The house itself was built in the time of Charles II, but it was damaged by Cromwell. The whole of our east wall was part of the castle. There are two round towers in it, the gatehouse is intact, and a stretch of the old walls at their full height joins it to the house. And Belmont Tower, all that remains of an even older castle, still stands on its mound close by. But I won't attempt to describe our peculiar home fully until I can see more time ahead of me than I do now. I'm writing this journal partly to practice my newly acquired speed writing and partly to teach myself how to write a novel. I intend to capture all characters and put in conversations. It ought to be good for my style to dash along without much thought, as up to now my stories have been very stiff and self-conscious. The only time Father obliged me by reading one of them, he said I combined stalagmites with a desperate effort to be funny. He told me to relax and let the words flow out of me. I wish I knew of a way to make words flow out of Father. Years and years ago, he wrote a very unusual book called Jacob Wrestling, a mixture of fiction, philosophy and poetry. It had a great success, particularly in America, where he made a lot of money by lecturing on it, and he seemed likely to become a very important writer indeed. But he stopped writing. Mother believed this was due to something that happened when I was about 5. We were living in a small house by the sea at the time. Father had just joined us after his second American lecture tour. One afternoon, when we were having tea in the garden, he had the misfortune to lose his temper with Mother very noisily, just as he was about to cut a piece of cake. He brandished the cake knife at her so menacingly that an officious neighbour jumped the garden fence to intervene, got himself knocked down. Father explained in court that killing a woman with our silver cake knife would be a long, weary business entailing sawing her to death, and he was completely exonerated of any intention of slaying Mother. The whole case seems to have been quite ludicrous, with everyone but the neighbour being very funny. But Father made the mistake of being funnier than the judge, and as there was no doubt whatever that he had seriously damaged the neighbour, he was sent to prison for 3 months.